Okay, well, it says I'm live, but I don't know whether we have sound this time. I tried to use, I basically, shit. Oh man, I don't know why my mic doesn't work when I use it. Uh, the same mic I use for recording, I guess, for no reason, just isn't working for the live YouTube thing. That's very stressful. Does anyone hear me? Let me see if I can. Oh, you can hear me. Oh, well, that's good. Good to know. And all it took was not using my expensive microphone. That's amazing. Well, I guess this is going to be the chat. I'll delete the other one when I get a chance. I don't know how the audio is going to sound. From what I remember, the Aluratech camera, which is picking up the audio, is a little more sensitive than my microphone, or at least there's no way for me to like turn it up or down. So, hope you can hear me okay. All right. Well, welcome. Let's see. If you enjoy my content here at PhD&D, statistically, it's likely that you enjoy it for the Ravenloft videos. No shame in that. I'm pretty proud of those. And the ones I have left to do, I think, to complete the 5e canon of the Mists would be Nova Vasa, the Sea of Sorrows, Saina, Kalikari, and what else? Forlorn. That's the other one. Those are the domains I have yet to do. Plus, there are some others that I'd like to do, just which aren't officially Ravenloft domains, and they're not really associated with, Dungeons and Dragons as a brand, but stuff like the Revalia, where Hecna lives, and that sort of weird circus horror domain that Hit Point Press put out called Hecna. So looks like I got messages on Discord, although, oh, hey. Let me, yeah, so, I feel that sometimes when so one question I got was, have I considered making my own domain of dread, my own Ravenloft domain? And I think a lot of times when I take a domain as it's described in Van Richten's guide, I end up kind of creating my own domain anyway. Sometimes this is because the domain is really underspecified. You're not sure what to do with it. And just in order to find what to do with it, you end up, you end up creating so much that it may as well be kind of like your own thing. You just took the names from Van Richten's guide or whatever. Like, for instance, Resibolos, right? Like, that was basically a puzzle dungeon I came up with. I mean, I was drawing on stuff like that game, Please Don't Touch Anything, 3D and stuff like that. Yeah, I like, yeah, as a writer, this is a good point, Alexander. Like, as a writer, I really appreciate prompts. They give me a kind of limitation that I can work with. Whereas if I sit down and I say, oh, I'm going to come up with a thing, a lot of times what happens is I'll psych myself out because I put so much pressure on myself to come up with something original or to do a unique whatever. So yeah, like having another domain that's already been named, that already has a dark lord, and they just haven't filled in the details. That's like really fun. And I think, part of doing that is just sort of designing your own, like, one ends up making the domain one's own. Excellent work. Create good. Oh, thank you, Mr. Vincent. Good to see you here. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there's. I think one reason why I really enjoy. Hey, this might be a hot topic to mention. One reason why I kind of enjoy 5th edition Ravenloft is because it has the explicit goal of corresponding domains of dread to genres of horror. So that there's this kind of one-to-one correspondence between what's a cool genre of horror fiction, whether or not we're familiar with it, and then like what domain could fit that, right? So the idea was that for every horror genre, there's a domain and vice versa, and you kind of, you know, the spread of domains we got in Van Richten's Guide for 5th edition was basically designed, I think, to do that. And although I think there's a lot to be said for the 2nd edition domains coming to that same functional task, at least initially, the idea was, well, let's take, I6 Ravenloft and let's just do more of that, right? Dracula was based on, Ravenloft was kind of based on Dracula. Well, let's take other Victorian era horror novels, Gothic novels, and let's adapt those. So that, like, I think the original idea behind 2nd edition Ravenloft was not so much that you're trying to set up like a domain for every horror genre. I think that in 2nd edition Ravenloft, the idea was there's a lot of cool Gothic adventure material in Victorian and 19th century literature, and also there's a format that we could kind of adapt it to in I6 Ravenloft. So let's do that. So I don't see 2nd edition Ravenloft as having the goal of like scouring the world for all the different genres of horror fiction and then giving each one representation. I think that's what 5th edition is trying to do with Ravenloft, is turn it into like a let's represent all the genres of horror fiction. But I think in 2nd edition it was much more about let's take the canonical Gothic novels and Gothic horror monsters and the Universal Studios monsters, and then let's make sure that each one of those guys or gals has a domain. And then once they got their Frankensteins and their mummies and stuff, they they branched out more. They gave positions to D&D antagonists like Lord Soth and stuff. Within the oh, thanks. Yeah. I like the so one thing that one difference that you might notice, if I'm right about how 5th edition aims to capture different genres of horror with the different domains, whereas 2nd edition aimed to capture more like classics of Gothic literature with the different domains. And those aren't completely coextensive tasks. One kind of difference that comes out is when you're reaching across cultures and nations and historical periods, are you trying to tell a scary story about this place, or are you trying to take the scary stories from this place, right? So that take a look at the difference between 2nd edition ICATH and 5th edition ICATH, right? 2nd edition ICATH it seemed to be much more like a scary story about an XP of China through a kind of colonial lens, whereas 5th edition ICATH is drawing on this really fun horror tradition from Hong Kong cinema, the Zhangqi movies, like Mr. Vampire and Encounters of the Spooky Kind and stuff that Banana Chan talked about in her interview. So, I think that's like whether you prefer one or the other. I've got my preferences, of course, but I do think it's interesting to note that the two kind of pitches for Ravenloft, they did seem to aim at different targets. Love ICATH. Yeah, me too. I really like the new ICATH. I also really like the Zhangqi, Blood in the Banquet Hall, that indie RPG that Banana Chan and Sen Fung Lem, I think is his name. That like they worked on that, and it was pretty cool. So sort of like a horror story set in a cultural setting versus a horror story built from the love of the culture. Yeah, or yeah, because there's a really interesting question, like to what extent is, say, Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, to what extent is that really set in India? Like, it's about India, kind of, but is it really set there? And there's a good question about like how much knowledge about a setting, a real world setting, must an author have in order to plausibly claim that their book is set there. But yeah, otherwise I would say, yeah, that's a really good way to phrase it. Yeah, very nicely put. For a man who enjoys fear-based games and categorizing different types of fear, have you by chance heard of the Magnus Archives? If not, you probably appreciate the Pantheon of Fears they constructed. Also, hi, John. And yeah, you know what? I sometimes do these live short story readings on Saturday night where I'll take like a scary short story and I read it and we talk about it. And one thing that's come up more than once, I think a fellow Dan who sometimes comes on to chat, I think he mentioned the Magnus Archives. If I'm not mistaken, is like an expansive, either like hyperlinked kind of mythology or podcast maybe mythology. But there's like a like kind of like the SCP stuff, which I also don't know about, but have been told a lot about. Thank you for the recommendation. I got a couple links. That's something that I eventually have to get around to because I am a lover of horror fiction. All kinds of horror fiction, cinema, literature. I'd like to say that I enjoy horror video games because I do, but I play video games very seldomly these days. Not out of a, like dismissal of them. It's just I'm always doing other things. And B, the people who make horror games these days are very good at it. So, and that, I mean that as a compliment. I mean, they can really scare the heck out of me when I play them. And this doesn't diminish my love of horror that I'm so sensitive to the feelings that the genre is named after, but it does mean that I could only play a horror video game for so long before just noping out of it. At least if the horror rests on something like a jump scare. If it's like one of these video games that you read or something, I'm much more. Those are honestly my favorite kind of video games. Disco Elysium, reflex-based games where it's like how fast is my thumb. Those are fun, but I tend to play them less and less over time. Home Security Hotline is a neat one in that regard. Oh, cool. Yeah. If it's a 15-minute video. Doc Bowers looks sort of like my favorite late night Saturday night Creature Features host, Bob Wilkins. I really miss that genre of programming. Is the sort of Elvira, Zachary, Joe Bob Briggs kind of sort of horror movie host, where there was a concession that you're going to watch some movies made from a variety of perspectives, skill training, and like fundings, and it's all going to be scary. And you take a break in between and talk about the scary movie, have like a scary skit. They kind of disappeared. I wonder if the reason why is a decline in, say, public access. I wonder if it's in the market calcification of televised media and the rise of cable TV. But yeah, I miss the those horror shows, Creature Features stuff. Trying to think of like good horror movies. I just saw a good horror movie last night with my friends Grant and David. It was called Pater Noster. I think it was called Pater Noster and the Society of Light, something like that. Pater Noster and the Society of Light. It was a lower budget film that had some really impressive, cinematography and interesting ideas in the writing and some funny jokes and pacing. Good stuff. Thank you, Pater Noster and the Mission of Light. That was cool. That was great. Thank you. Yeah. That was a fun film. Pater Noster and the Mission of Light, a horror podcast radio show. That's a music artist and a movie. Yeah, that's the thing. I saw the horror movie, and the horror movie is about a band, and it's one of these kinds of music of Eric Zahn, kind of eldritch music with a sinister connection to a cult kind of things, where like you're looking for this rare LP, and the more you look for it, the deeper the story goes, and then you realize this isn't about an LP at all. It's about freaking Cthulhu or whatever. I mean, it's not a Lovecraftian thing, but it's that kind of a story, that kind of a horror story. And so I saw it last night, and then I was surprised. I was on Discord and I saw that one of the buddies who had watched the movie with me was listening to a band with that name. So I guess I guess it is a band too. I don't want to hype myself up into thinking that listening to the band in real life would give me the same thrilling, horrific experience that the protagonists of the film enjoyed when they looked for it. But that's cool. I'll have to check it out. I'm probably going to. But that was a horror film I saw last night. Other recent good horror movies. Good question. I really enjoyed. I mean, some of the best horror films I've seen are of recent make. I really enjoyed Jordan Peele's Nope. I really enjoyed the other one. The it's not Beyond the Black Rainbow, although that's one of my favorites too. It's the other. It's the show. It's the guy who wants to watch the show but it's a show for girls, and it's got gender and horror, and it was really good, and it kind of got snubbed at the Oscars. I can't believe the name is skipping me. It's like an amazing film. Let's see if I can find it. It just came out. I'm embarrassed that I forgot the name. It's like just a couple years old. Talk to me. It wasn't Talk to. I saw the TV Glow. Ah, thank you, Grant. Yes, and hi, Grant. Yeah, it was. I saw the TV Glow. That was one of my favorite horror films. Just as an incredibly deep and moving. And so I think the monologue that was given inside the planetarium is like one of the most powerful, I don't know, moments in film. And then you have these really moving moments where you have like the setup of sort of our character telling, disclosing that they think something's wrong with them, and they don't know how to understand what's on inside of who they are. And then at the end, you've got the sort of literal kind of symbology of the opening, and there's light. The light is still inside. Yeah. We're all going to the World's Fair. I'm curious about that one. Is that a black and white film that's set? Wait, was this the one that was filmed illegally in Disneyland? Because that fact about its production alone kind of makes me want to see it. But it was like a horror film. No, that's. Oh, okay, all right. I'm thinking of another one. We're all going to the World's Fair. Oh, wait, no, that's the one that the director of I Saw the TV Glow did, like right before. I haven't seen that yet, but I want to, having enjoyed I Saw the TV Glow. Yeah. Yeah, that was, yeah, I was thoroughly impressed by the director's capacity for storytelling, to say the least. And I don't know if the director also wrote the film, but yeah, I saw. Is like I never get stage fright for doing a live stream or anything, but I do forget almost all the most relevant facts that I would want to. Oh, Jane Shunbrun. Jane Shunbrun is the director, so I'm gonna have to check out what Jane Shunbrun has. What else she's got in her catalog, or they have in their catalog. What they have in their catalog. So I noticed that recently in RPG news on Reddit, and it's kind of been making the rounds of different Discord discussions. There was one of the finalists for the Chaosium. I want to call it the Burp Engine, but I don't intend to be derisive with that. It's just basic role playing, and it's BRP. The Burp Engine. There was a Burp finalist, and they released a game called In Death, which is a game about the afterlife, or more a game about being dead. And I have to say I'm intrigued based on the idea alone, because, not going to lie, that's also been on my mind and a lot of other people's minds. I know that William SRD not long ago did a video on Wraith the Oblivion, and he reminded everyone in the course of doing that video that Wraith was everyone's favorite game to talk about and everyone's least favorite game to play. You know, I haven't tried to play Wraith myself. This is just, you know, kind of like a platitude that's uttered about it, but extremely depressing. Yeah, exactly, right. Like I enjoy literature that makes me cry and, you know, crushes my spirit and makes me wish I was never born and stuff, right? Like I enjoy Nicole Cushing and Thomas Ligotti and all that good stuff. So the fact of it being depressing, if anything, is kind of an appealing feature. But you're not going to be able to invite people to your table very easily with a game like that, you know. There's a VR game, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm the same way with a lot of scary games where I love them and I also can barely play them, especially if it was a VR game. I feel like that would really hit me where I live. Yeah, well, in that Wraith the Oblivion video, William SRD kind of like did a review of the VR game at the tail end, and I kind of tuned out because I didn't know what he was talking about. I was kind of interested, but you know, yeah, it really seems like of all genres of gameplay that would really take to that medium, it would be horror, right? Like I don't think of like a Mario platformer as being like something that like, oh, this would be perfect for VR, but like horror, yeah, absolutely. First person perspective, things jump. I'm supposed to walk down this hallway that's lined with closed doors and it's very dim. Yeah, that's perfect for VR. But yeah, so Wraith the Oblivion, and then when my team and I were working for a couple of years on 5X, the King in Yellow RPG, there's this, you know, sort of topic that came up of, you know, like how do you deal with the problem of mortality or lethality in role-playing games? We all sort of agreed that there was this relationship where if your game design is tight, then the more lethal your game is, the easier it should be to re-roll a new character, right? So you don't want a high lethality game where character creation takes 20 minutes, and you also don't want like, you know, like, well, you might want a low lethality game where character creation is quick, but the idea is that a necessary condition for a high lethality game was that, you know, your character creation should be fast. So then the question is like, well, what would you do if there was a game where you couldn't die? You know, like what if you were already dead? And because of you know, the lore that I came up with for our King in Yellow game, having to do with Carcosa, right? In my version of Carcosa is heaven, and in the theological sense, heaven has been destroyed. It doesn't exist anymore, either physically or theologically, right? It used to have a function that was attributed to it, like, oh, good people go there and God lives there and all that stuff. None of that is true because it's been destroyed. A frightfully mortal thing has befallen what should have been a timeless realm, and that's Carcosa. And you know, our version of the King in Yellow is just God, but undead. And you know, so we were thinking a lot about Undead Heaven and stuff like that when we were, you know, kind of coming up with the game, and I was, you know, idea fishing, brainstorming. And one thing that I kept wanting to do was like, why don't we have a game that's just set in heaven, and you've already, like, it's basically, it would be like a game version of Ambrose Bierce's short story, An Inhabitant of Carcosa, right? You show up in heaven and it's closed. It's closed. Heaven is closed. No one's there. They're all gone. What are you gonna do now? Right? And it's this cool idea for, like, you know, kind of a bleak setting that's a new type of fantasy setting, I think, right? Like, it's not like all the excitement and danger of the fires of hell. If anything, it's just like desolate. Like, what is this, right? And you could have a lot of opportunities for philosophical gameplay and sort of ruminations on the nature of time and eternity and, you know, God's eye view of things. I've really wanted to work on a game like that. The ideas for it came up when we were working on the King in Yellow, and I just haven't, you know, I am actually, the next thing we're working on is going to be something in that neighborhood. We're currently thinking of something like a Banshee game, like you're going to play as a Banshee, but that's also, you know, like Banshee Borg is our name for it right now. Oh, let me catch up on Heaven is where death goes to die. Ooh, is that your line? That's very nice. Lovely bit of poetry there. There was something left there once, but the age of legends and history is past. Yeah. There's this has come up a couple times too. In the short story Saturday stuff. My buddy Grant Dowell, who has this cool literary blog, Weird Murmur. He's talked about this sometimes too, where like there's a certain kind of horror that has to do with the scope of the world's age, like of just how vast history is, right? Lovecraft was very big on, both space and time being too vast to comprehend and stuff, but just attending to the history part of it has a neat kind of horror to it, and I would want to tap into that in kind of the sort of Undead Heaven RPG. Anyway, I haven't read In Death yet. I picked up a copy on DriveThruRPG. I want to support the creators. They're obviously thoughtful, independently minded, folks with some cool ideas. And I have a plan to sort of like read through it. I've glanced at the character sheet. I was wondering specifically how the burp engine fares with such a topic. I tend to subscribe to the idea that mechanics are not neutral when it comes to the game's theme, and that there are different types of mechanics that better adapt to certain themes than others, right? So that if you're, for example, like if you want a game whose theme has to do with dwindling resources and running out of stuff and barely hanging on to what little you have and always scraping by, I think the resistance system by Rowan, Rook, and Deckard, the system used for Spire and Heart, the City Beneath, and also 5X, the King in Yellow, that's like a really great system because you don't have something so nice and well behaved as like a stable pile of hit points where it's like, all right, I counted my hit points and everything. I have 12 of them. Whew! I can rest on 12. 12 is the number. I'll bet the farm on 12. No. In the resistance system, like every time you get damaged at all, there's like this percentage thing of like you just might eat it, right? And you don't know when that'll happen. And every time you get hit, the chances go up, but you can't be sure, right? You don't have this nice predictability of hit points. It's this other way of modeling your character's well-being that makes it feel more desperate, that makes it feel less reliable and more dangerous. And I think other games, like if you wanted a cozy game, I have yet to dig into the cozy games, these bed and breakfast games and stuff, but I would assume that you've got a different kind of mechanic there where resources are well behaved and more stable. You have less of a focus on dwindling resources and more on a focus of like gaining stuff and earning stuff and getting customers and things. You'd want like positive reinforcement for a cozy game, and you'd want punishment for a negative one. There was something left. Oh, yeah, here. Yeah. So, other things. Some folks have asked what I'm going to do when I stop making Ravenloft videos. I've got quite a few videos to do. I mean, they'll probably be making Ravenloft videos for at least the rest of this calendar year. The question is, do I dip into like older domains that maybe only briefly existed for the tail end of 2E or something? Do I start taking requests from the domains that fans have come up with and covering those? Do I start covering like, and this is kind of one direction I was leaning, do I start covering settings which, functionally speaking, should be Ravenloft domains and could be, and just for copyright reasons or for historical reasons they aren't? I'm thinking of the early D&D adventure Castle Amber. It's basically a Ravenloft domain. It's a cursed family trapped in a time-frozen castle, and they're all like ghosts and cursed people. And there's a wreath of mist that surrounds the castle, and you can't go through the wreath of mist, right? It's a mist-bound cursed castle full of goth people. It just has a little bit more of a puzzle dungeon or funhouse dungeon feel to it, but that's a Ravenloft domain. Also, I mentioned the Revalia. Hit Point Press has a wonderful campaign called Hecna. I say without irony and without any encouragement from the nice people at Hit Point Press. I assume they're nice. That Hecna is the best 5th edition RPG campaign I've run, with Curse of Strahd being a close second. Hecna is just amazing. It's a really, really cool. Oh, hey! Hi, Ash. Reading any good horror books? What a wonderful question. I am. So I'm reading 2 really weird books right now. One of them is by Michael Sisko. It's called The Great Lover, and it is the weirdest thing I've ever read. It's also one of the more kind of viscerally disgusting things I've read. But I keep reading it because the language is so poetic and beautiful. This book is out of print. I don't know how to get a hold of a physical copy, but there are absolutely you can find EPUBs and electronic copies out there. Yo ho ho! And it's a weird story about a man who perishes by being flushed through a sewer treatment plant, and who then stitches his lips shut and goes around collecting bodies in the subway tunnels and in the sewers. And then he collects ghosts. And then he becomes this strange, weird, sewer drenched version of Freddy Krueger, but instead of encroaching on people's dreams to kill them out of revenge, he does it for voyeuristic purposes. And then he gets contacted by a guy who wants to hire him to be a prosthetic libido. It's really weird. It's Michael Sisko at his most Michael Sisko-y, I think. But that one's fun. And speaking of Sisko, I finished reading Black Brain, which comes out, I think officially releases in a dozen days. Should definitely check that one out. Black Brain is Michael Sisko's work that's dedicated to Thomas Ligotti. And it's a story about a man who suffers from excruciating, debilitating, downright psychedelic levels of agony in his foot. He's suffering from foot pain. And as he's trying to endure it, his mind sort of retreats to a series of very strange events that, at least in his imagination, culminated in his foot pain. And it has to do with his relationship to a black hole on the other side of the galaxy that he and his colleagues accidentally discovered when they were doing research at an institute for the study of holes. And this institute was founded on the on the philosophical assumption that a hole is ontologically different from an absence. Holes and absences are metaphysically different. A hole is a weird thing between being and non-being, and we have to study them. And somehow in the course of studying these things, through a lot of nonsense, I have to say, fun nonsense, Sisko nonsense, they end up there's a particle that's quantumly entangled with this black hole on the other side of the galaxy, and they're trying to track it down inside their building, and it gets caught in this guy's foot, and it hurts a lot. And it's great. It's great. I like it a lot. I'm a big fan of Thomas Ligotti too. I feel like this is a lovely tribute. Not that I'm in a position to judge tributes of Thomas Ligotti. I mean, Nicole Cushing also has some good stories that are dedicated to Ligotti. The Suffering Clown was written for a Ligotti tribute anthology. That sounds viscerally disgusting. Yeah, The Great Lover is gross, but you have to understand how beautiful the language is, right? The prologue is gorgeous. It's like this. It's from the perspective of a corpse that's buried in a coffin in a cemetery, and how he and the other corpses have extended their nervous systems out to touch each other through the soil and through the coffins themselves, and how on one occasion they're all lighting up. They can see each other through the soil and rock. All these cadavers sort of suddenly lurching as if alive and lighting up like Christmas tree lights, and they're all connected to each other. And they have these strange sort of thoughts as they moan and then turn into beasts without changing shape. It's really beautiful. This is literally when I started to read The Great Lover, what happened was it was like 3 in the morning or something. I had just finished reading James by Percival Everett, and I had mistakenly glanced at the first page of The Great Lover. And then, like the eyes of Hildred Castaigne riveted to the first page of The King in Yellow when it was first, thrown open before the grated firelight, my eyes were also riveted to the first page of The Great Lover. And so I read the second page. And so I read the third page. And so I read the fourth page. And then before I know it, it's 5 in the morning. And I'm still eager to stay up and keep reading, but I can't do that. And so then I go to sleep. But I got up the next day and I kept reading it. I'm on chapter 3. It's the chapters are pretty lengthy. That doesn't really tell you anything about but I'm really enjoying The Great Lover. I'm looking forward to enjoying The Ghost Pirates by William Hope Hodgson. I've ordered it from a local bookstore, Persnickety Books. It just hasn't come in yet, but I'm going to start that and devour it greedily. I intend to draw on the Ghost Pirates. Whatever is in it, I intend to draw on in the course of writing a video for the Sea of Sorrows. What I've written for the Sea of Sorrows, it also draws on. I'm pointing at the script up here. That I've got a script that's hanging up on the wall. I've got a giant thing that I write on. My Sea of Sorrows script draws on an Edgar Allan Poe story called A Descent into the Maelstrom. And then it also draws on just stuff that I'm afraid of, like being underwater, Subnautica stuff, thalassophobia. Just wanted to stop in and say you're doing great work here and on the Discord channel. Hey, thank you, John. Thank you for stopping in and saying those things. Thank you. Yeah, it's good to have such a supportive and great community. I've gotten a lot of really great ideas from the people who watch my videos and who chime in the comments, or who join the Discord and join our type discussions or our live short story readings on Saturday night. So yeah, it's really I have to say the channel is definitely, the channel exists. My channel continues to exist because there are folks like you who are interested. So thanks again. Yeah, I think there's some, there's a good half dozen Ravenloft videos left in me at least, and that's, who knows what's going to come out in October. That's something I want to talk about. A script, Derail It Add way more than you intended to. Sacrifice personal connection and insanity for it. That's how you do it. Well said. Yeah. That's kind of the magical thing about writing an adventure for a role-playing game, especially Dungeons and Dragons, is that what you need, because the players and their PCs are going to bring a lot to the table. And if you're a creative and accommodating DM, you're going to, the thing that actually happens at the table is going to be a vector sum of what you've written and what they choose to do, right? And so, this is one reason why I'm very, very careful on my videos to say outline an adventure or sketch out an adventure. They're a sketch, because I want what I propose for the viewers to be, kind of flexible and versatile, because, and I don't mean flexible in the sense that I sketched out an entire world with 50 different people with exclamation points over their heads ready to give you a different side quest, because I can't, that's too much. But the idea is that, like, you want to let your players be creative too. So yeah, without irony, players should kind of derail. Yeah, Heckna is really cool. It's really fun. I was very impressed with the way that Hit Point Press, grab it here, off the shelf. I was really impressed with how the folks at Hit Point Press had structured this adventure, and specifically the thing that impressed me was that there are a lot of very, 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 very different ways the story of this campaign can go, and they include lots of very important divergences from a plot, right? Like whether the PCs even find an item that would be crucial to their victory is, like, that's up in the air. And this isn't written the way that a lot of 5e adventures are, even the ones that I write, where you sort of do this. You're like, well, what happens if the PCs don't go this way to find the magic weapon? you just put the magic weapon somewhere else. You make it a quantum ogre, right? You do that sort of thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I'm really impressed with the way that Hit Point Press didn't do that. And like the way that Heckner runs is like you're going through a story, all right, but it's a story with a lot of like branching paths. And like while the players are doing things with their PCs, Heckner and his minions are also doing things. And there's parallel sort of progress. So like if the PCs don't find this one thing, these guys will, and then and then you'll be off to a different section of the book. And the some folks complained when they were part of the Kickstarter and they said, oh, it took them forever to fulfill the thing. They kept saying, oh, we're still editing, oh, we're still editing, oh, we're still editing. But listen, folks, it shows. They really did rigorously playtest this thing and gave a lot of thought to the way the paths can branch, and it's great. It's really cool. So the only competitor to its quality, I would say, is Curse of Strahd, which is just so lovable. I was trying to explain this to a friend. I know this is not my own unique idea. Lots of people talk about this. Sly Flourish talks about it. Some 5th edition adventures and modules, they're the kinds of things where you want to add more. You're like, oh, this is cool. Oh, I could put this in here. Oh, I could put that in there. This is so cool. And so like the adventure has this way of stimulating your creativity. It makes you want to come up with new things to stick on it. And then there are adventures that are kind of the opposite. They feel broken. They feel incomplete. It feels like it's not so much that you want to come up with something for it. It's like you have to come up with something. It's like, oh man, they didn't put, all right, I guess I'm going to come up with a thing here. All right, I guess I'm going to come up with this. And I still don't, I haven't unlocked what this magic formula is, what the difference is between the gaps that are attractive that make your DMs want to add things, and then the gaps that are unattractive that make your DMs think that something was missing, that you left something out. But I think that's the magic of knowing where that difference is clearly present in Heckna by Hit Point Press. I got a lot of feedback and ideas from the Ravenloft discussions. Yeah, there's some really great discussions on the Ravenloft Reddit, on the Curse of Strahd Reddit, on the Discord, on my Discord. I get a lot of great ideas from the really creative people in there. There's a lot of really creative folks there. All across the world, too. We're in all different time zones and things. Elevator pitch. Yeah, leaves freedom for creativity for the DMs and players, too. Yeah, a lot of, I get the impression that, and this is sort of a hope, too, that when I list, where do I normally list them? I guess I list them over here. When I list the media to help get an imaginative grip on the domain, I list these short stories I've read or these movies I've watched or whatever. Like I would hope that, for the player or for the viewers who have seen or heard of a few of those things, that sets off other associations, right? So they're like, oh, well, I haven't read My Teacher is an Alien, but that makes me think about da 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 da, and suddenly they have their own insight into how they might run the domain of Neurangen, for example, or what you have. See more of the King in Yellow stuff? Hell yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I feel as though I've got a lot to say about the King in Yellow, and I haven't made any videos that are just about those things because in the course of pitching my, my exegetical views on it, I was also pitching my Kickstarter, my game. It's not just here's my cool interpretation of it, but here's my cool interpretation of it, and it's in this game that I want you to back. So I do think it would be cool to go back and just make some videos about the Robert W. Chambers story and about the Carcosa mythos. I'd really like to recommend too, like some of the great literature that's being done like today. There's that anthology by Hippocampus Press, Under Twin Suns, Alternate Histories of the Yellow Sign. And it's got these great stories by John Langan and Sarah Reed, and there's a lot of cool folks in there. Drakenheim. I think Drakenheim does a great job at providing enough detail and gaps. Yeah, I'm curious about that one because fellow creators, the Dungeon Dudes, have some really neat material out there. I I must confess that when I watch YouTube, it usually isn't other D&D tubers. It's just like other unrelated things. But when I do tune in, because I want to know like what people are talking about, and I am interested in other creative contributions. I watch Pointy Hat a lot. He's great. Dungeon Dudes have some cool things too, and I was curious about Drakkenheim. I haven't played it yet. I haven't played it yet though. But I appreciate the recommendation. Descent into Avernus, Eve of Ruin are once as a DM that I feel they didn't put enough thought into those adventures. I hate DMing those ones. Yeah, I haven't DM'd Eve of Ruin yet, but I'm going to. I owe a lot of my D&D players, a lot of my 5e players, a high-level campaign, another high-level campaign. So I'm going to run that for them, for those interested. And I'm probably going to mess with a few things. I'm definitely going to mess with the Death House and with Ravenloft. I only read through it a couple of times when I first got the book, but I thought it was weird what they did with Strahd at the end of the thing. Spoilers. I don't think it matters too much because everyone knows about this and he's advertised in the trailer of the book and stuff. But there's Strahd is in Eve of Ruin, and it's weird. It's just weird. And I think I'm going to replace it with one of the other 36 Ravenloft videos or Ravenloft domains I've thought about. But I have run Descent into Avernus, and I have to say, I loved Descent into Avernus, but it's also because I ignored a ton of it. I tried to run the prologue as they recommended. It's like, okay, I guess you PCs, you're members of the Flaming Fist in Baldur's Gate, and you're like trying to keep refugees out of the city. Wait a minute, that sounds like a jerk thing to do. What are you doing? What is this? But we ran it anyway, and it was just kind of like rocky at first. Like I remember the campaign says, oh, you have to come up with these secrets that like not just Rime of the Frost Maiden. There was like this campaign prep that Baldur's Gate had you do where it was like, like come up with a criminal thing that the group has going on or something that they're blackmailed for or something, and that didn't pay off at all. There was nothing. Like we all struggled in the first part of the adventure until we got to Avernus, and then when we got to Avernus, we happily realized that we could all just ignore that first part of the adventure anyway because it didn't really like. The only thing it did is it notified the PCs that Elturel was in danger. That was it, right? But like all the other stuff they have, even the Dungeon of the Dead 3, which is not a bad dungeon, it's just like, what is this doing here? Is this like supposed to be a tie-in to the Baldur's Gate 3 game? Like what is Baldur's Gate even doing in the Avernus book? I don't know. But once we were in Hell, or once we were in Avernus, that is, that was a lot of fun. I really like. I was not running the encounters very strictly. I just saw sort of the kinds of things that were in Avernus, the locations, and I thought, oh yeah, this is exciting. The idea of traveling throughout Hell, and you have these Mad Max, motorcycle gangs and these war machines and these different rival warlords, and no one is really in charge in Avernus. I mean, Zariel technically is, but everyone's always constantly fighting over it. That was all very fun. I think my favorite part of Avernus was the freaking that low level the Bargula, the Barlgura, who's disguised as like a little kid who's like trying to get out of some like magic prison that he's in, and he's just like a mean random demon, and he's like disguised as like a unusually well-educated child, and it's just a funny encounter because you're like going through literal hell, and you see like a school kid. You're like, what the hell is this doing? What? And then the kid is like, yes, well, I'm trying to figure out the calculations of transmutation runes relative to the necromantic disjunctions of the. And you're like, this is weirder and weirder. And then it turns out it's a Barogura, which is just like one of these gruesome orangutan ape demons. And then the thing that the Barogura wants to do is hilarious because he thinks he's like, I know, I'll just make a pact with a devil that's further down in the nine hells, and that'll get me out of this layer of the nine hells, right? And yeah, he gets what he wants, and it's not what he should have wanted. And that was all just a riot. That was all hilarious. Wild Beyond the Witchlight was really fun. Tomb of Annihilation was pretty fun. Tomb of Annihilation was another one where I just 3 sessions in, I was doing whatever I wanted with the jungle. I was in the process of writing an adventure called Phantasms of Sri Raji, which is my 230-page Kalakari campaign that's on DM's Guild. I'm proud of the writing. I'm proud of the encounter designs. I'm really ashamed of the monsters. I was in a rush to put the book out, and I really just wanted to make sure I could cinch my vision in time for to be out before Van Richten's guide, really, because I didn't know what I'd already heard that was announced, and I didn't know what they were going to do, and I wanted to make sure that whatever ideas I had for Sri Raji, I didn't know that would become Kalakari. I wanted to make sure that I could take credit for the ideas that I thought of for that domain, so I was hurrying, and I didn't know how to design monsters. I didn't know any of the rules for designing them, like hit dice relative to hit points relative to size. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was eyeballing it. And I was also playtesting it with a group of players that were much more interested in role play, story, and drama than they were in tactics. So, especially because this is a high-level campaign, Phantasms of Sri Raji is full of monsters that hit like kittens, and it's kind of frustrating. And I apologize for that, but yeah, I ran Tomb of Annihilation when I was in the process of writing this India jungle themed kind of Phantasms of Sri Raji adventure. So midway through Tomb of Annihilation, I just kind of took chunks from it and kind of reskinned it and put it as Kalakari stuff instead. I loved Wild Beyond the Witchlight. That was a very open-ended campaign. Oh, thanks, Ash. See you later. Say that 6 times fast. Yeah. If your goal is to bridge the gap of what is attractive or not for DMs, take inspiration from other creatives and see what works and use that knowledge to your advantage. Yeah. I think this is one thing that I feel like not to get into industry gossip, but it's a D&D tuber. It's me. So briefly, I wonder about the degree to which Wizards executives or people making decisions at that company, like to what degree do they realize that a lot of the appeal of Dungeons and Dragons has nothing to do with the actual game or product or brand? That a lot of people are excited about D&D because they see themselves as creatives, right? As creators and creatives, right? That people love D&D because they see it as this kind of place that they could bring their own fantasy ideas to, their own crafting ideas to, their own map making ideas to, their own soundtrack ideas to, their own writing, adventure design, map, like all this stuff. And people, like, it's not because everybody loves Waterdeep, it's not because it's like, oh, well, we're checking our marketing polls and it looks like people really like Vecna now. It's like, yeah, they like Vecna, Stranger Things came out, yada, yada. But like, the appeal of D&D has less to do with D&D and more to do with this hobby of which it is a part, right? And I get the impression, and I've debated this with some of my friends who are also very, very, researched on the topic and thoughtful on the topic. Like, to what extent is the 2024 version of the rules functioning to crowd out some of that space, right? 2014 D&D was, it's still a pretty technical role-playing game, but compared to stuff like that came before it, it was very simple. And 2014 gameplays would go pretty quickly. It's like, I move here, I swing the sword, I don't have a bonus action, your turn, right? And you just go fast, right? And because it had this sparsity to it, people would start bringing in their own things. It's like, oh, well, I've got a rule for chases. It's like, oh, well, I've got a rule for treasure hunting. It's like, oh, I got my rule, right? And the idea is like, people felt attracted to this edition, I think, because they saw those gaps. And my analogy is, it's like walking into a home that someone is trying to sell, and you're more likely to buy it because you see all these nice, empty, clean surfaces. And you see those surfaces and you're like, oh, I could put my stuff on those surfaces. Oh, my picture could go right there. Right? Like, an empty surface is inviting. And you feel like, oh, this is my space to do some stuff. And 2014 was full of empty surfaces, It had a lot of cool empty surfaces, and it generated this explosion of content and Kickstarters and crowdfunding and channels and all this amazing stuff. And I'm really wondering if like like a lot of the building and tweaking of the rules of 2024, and this isn't an anti-2024 rant or anything, but it's just like, it's hard. I noticed that a lot of the new rule set does seem to try to like cover all those bases, right? So it's like, well, now we have our own rule for this, so you don't have to come up with one. And you're like, yay, I guess. Okay, cool. Like, don't have to come up with anything. It looks like it. You've got rules for all this stuff. Okay, thanks for all the rules. Or is it an actual improvement, right? And of course, both things could be true. But I have wondered about like the inevitable complex, the inevitable increase in rule complexity for 5e, and whether that comes at a cost to the appeal of being a creator or a creative. Because it's still, to this day, the folks that will show up on my Discord and they have really cool ideas and they share, like, a lot of these ideas are things that are like, oh, you're introducing a whole subsystem to the game, right? Or you're introducing a whole new option for how to play this thing, right? Usually we play it with a D20 plus mods to meet or beat a target number, but now you're saying a percentage dice system for this one thing. And I feel like a lot of those are a lot easier to design and pitch, if you don't already have like a denser rule set. I don't know. Disagree with me though. Fight with me on it if you want. That's fun. Have I thought of making Call of Cthulhu content? Yes, I have. I blended D&D and Call of Cthulhu into a campaign, and that lasted 4 years and is ending in 3 sessions. That's really cool. Yeah. I'm thinking of So I played my first Call of Cthulhu game, and I didn't run it. I played in it a couple of years ago. I think it was Scott Dorward's adventure, Blackwater Creek. It was really cool. And of course, as soon as I played in it, I was like, wow, that was great. How did this work? How did that work? And then I got my own copy of it. And then I appropriated bits of it for my Wildlands video. But playing Call of Cthulhu is a very different kind of experience, and it's really fun. And it whetted my appetite to write adventures for Call of Cthulhu. In particular, there was a story by Harlan Ellison called The Whimper of Whipped Dogs. And it's a brutal horror story. I would never read it aloud for a live short story reading or for a recorded one, because there's certain words I just don't want anyone to ever hear coming out of my mouth. And some of those words are in that story. But it's like a weird take on like eldritch horror, cosmic horror, and it has a like really gross, disturbing human dimension to it. And I thought, like, with the right kind of creativity, you could do a memorable Call of Cthulhu adventure based on that Harlan Ellison story, where people are kind of, I mean, this is the horror story that was inspired by the tragic and brutal killing of an innocent person in an alleyway in New York. Which and there's a lot of like kind of exaggeration and urban mythology about it, but the idea was that a lot of people witnessed this killing, and nobody did anything because each person assumed the other witnesses would do something instead, or at least that's the way it's talked about. I later found out that this wasn't so, that a lot of people had tried to call law enforcement or whatever, but yeah, the idea of there being like a mob of people all witnessing a cold-blooded killing and doing nothing, either because they all assumed more altruism from their neighbors or because they're part of some collective ritual, a ritual of Eldritch New York. It's quite a departure point for a horror story, and certainly for a Call of Cthulhu adventure, I think. RPGs are art forms, I think. And in some cases, they're kind of collections, like they're sort of intersections of art forms, like that idea of the Gesamtkunstwerke or whatever, the altogether art. I mean, I know that actual idea is kind of dumb and has come up by Wagner, who's a silly old racist, but yeah, the idea of like the intersection of certain kinds of the fine arts, like I think RPGs are they have a lot of that. There's so many different kinds of creativity, and different DMs and different players bring different kinds of creativity to their table. So that I've definitely sat at tables where, I would have wanted more from the storytelling, but visually, like, look at this. This is like a beautiful sculpture, what they ended up setting up with all these minis and all these, and that's a whole way of playing the game that, it brings a different dimension of creativity to it than, or another example is like dramatic stuff. Like I'm very much about narrative and situation and storytelling, but I definitely have enjoyed and benefited from the presence of players at my table who are thespians. They're actors, and they excel at that sort of thing, and they really have a way of enriching your engagement with the fictional world. And yeah, that's totally different from literary creativity or a sound design creativity, people who make soundtracks for their campaigns. How could 2024 take away my sanity stat? I love making a game using a sanity stat that was an optional role in the 2014 DMG. Oh, well, that's a really nice thing, John, is that, nothing Wizards of the Coast or anyone else can ever erase the stuff that we like from 2014 from history. So if there's like something you like from 2014, just keep running it that way. For instance, I'm gonna run 2024 stuff, but I have to confess, I'm really tempted to just use the old rules for grappling. I like the old rules for grappling. They were so easy to remember. It was just like opposed checks. Bleh. Who lost? Well, did you lose? You're grappled. That was it. It was it. Just two people roll dice. Which is higher? You settled the question. Now it's like, well, you make an attack roll to see if you can hit them in order to grapple them. And then once you've hit them, assuming your attack roll succeeds, then they make a saving throw. Now, what's the saving throw? It's just a little calculation, based on something either having to do with strength or dex, just a little bit, right? And it's like, oh my God, really? Can I just roll 2 dice? That was so nice. Why did we? And so there's things like that where I'm probably going to stick with the 2014 rules. Why did grappling become more complex? Why? Other things, 2024, drinking a potion is a bonus action. Fine. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any problem with drinking a potion as an action. That was fine with me. But like, bonus action, everybody seems to like it. Okay, I will update the OS right there. That's fine. But when it comes to that kind of mechanic, though, which is featured in Call of Cthulhu and stuff, I really like the model of Darkest Dungeon and stressed out characters, like having a stress meter. And I've made a video on it already, and I've talked about it a couple times. But there's a fellow online, I assume he's still online, named Core Artificer. And he had put together an adaptation. He had adapted Darkest Dungeon's mechanic of stress, and it's sort of kind of death blow, heart attack, affliction, and virtue systems. He'd adapted all of that to 5e, and I found that to be a pretty elegant, fun thing. Okay, cards on the table. Some of my players love it, and some of my players hated it. So it wasn't universally well received, but I like that as kind of a version of what, a sanity meter or what have you. I should also do an adventure based on Ellison's Repent Harlequin, said the TikTok man. Yeah, I will do that as soon as I read that story. I have no excuse for not reading Repent Harlequin, said the TikTok man, or I have no mouth and I must scream. For whatever reason, the Ellison stories I've read are these other weird ones, like How Interesting, A Tiny Man, and the Whimper of Whipped Dogs, and what was the weird one about Moses? Chatting with Anubis is a weird one, and like From A to Z in the Chocolate Alphabet. But yeah, I have to get on those two because they've been recommended to me multiple times now again by folks whose taste I trust. But yeah, I'll be thinking of. It's almost a curse now because now when I read literature, there's like a little guy in my brain who's like, would this make a good adventure? Oh, would this be a good adventure? What would this do for an adventure? Right? And there's like, I can't even, I can enjoy literature and I do still, but there's this guy in my brain now who's like, how would this fare as a Ravenloft thing? And I can't turn it off now. it's impossible. I don't mind it. I actually I think that there's a kind of unhealthy fetish that people can develop for the untainted mind or whatever. This idea, I'm a lover of David Lynch, and other lovers of David Lynch kind of go on this idea that like once you've explained something, the mystery goes away, and it's bad for the mystery to go away because mysteries are so magical. And I sympathize with that, but only to a degree, because I also think that it's really amazing and moving and fascinating how people's perspectives change and how they find new mysteries after old ones are cleared up. And so I don't mind the fact that I have acquired a compulsive aptitude for adventure adaptation when I read literature. It's just kind of a neat thing that's happened to me. But yeah, I will be, when I read Repent, Harlequin Said the TikTok Man, I'll be thinking of Call of Cthulhu. At least in a little bit. That guy will talk about it. All right. Odd question. As a dungeon master, what is your favorite tool of intimidation? For me, it rhymes. Effed up Dr. Seuss words. One of my... Oh, okay. I see. So I guess there are two things. This is a good question. It could be one of two good questions. One question is techniques for building in universe terror, right? So techniques for building up stuff that would plausibly and should scare the PCs, right? Which the players can still get like caught up in, right? In the same way that you're watching a horror movie and there's stuff that would scare the protagonists, and you can get caught up in it as a viewer, and that's very different from like stuff that would scare the players, right? Where it's like, ugh, this is pushing my buttons a little. Because there are games which play with that. Bluebeard's Bride by Magpie Games has some mechanics and some really thoughtful instruction on, you know, pressing your players' buttons in real life, and you know, playing with you know, people's thresholds in a way that everyone can agree is comfortable. But when it comes to like making things scary for like a Ravenloft adventure, I think what I defer to is poetics. So I try to describe something that already has familiar names, or a familiar name in a Dungeons and Dragons game, and just not use its name at all. And I know this is an old standby, but it's worth repeating. Is that, you know, whether it's a potion sitting on a desk or a gargoyle sitting on a cathedral ledge, I want to make sure that the terms I use to describe that don't mention words like potion or gargoyle, even though gargoyle is actually a cool word. But if you say gargoyle at the D&D table, people are going to be like, huh, that's like CR4, it's an elemental, blah, blah, blah. Nah, no, don't do that. Right, you have to say that the scowling warped hunk of stone squats hideously, you know, as if leering. You dip into some Edgar Allan Poe stuff. That's usually what I do. Is I try to indulge in my inner, you know, poet, or I try to get a little more verbose about things that already have names. I also like to get into the weather. You know, I think at dramatic moments are when you might notice how cold it is in here, or a dramatic moment might be, right, the air smells acrid, right, and sort of bringing the other senses in on the action, not just visual. I think that helped highlight a moment, because this is a thing that often gets talked about. You know, some people justifiably get impatient with lengthy, rich DM descriptions. That's understandable, because you're not there to, you know, workshop your DM's poetry, right? That's not what you're there to do. But if you err too far in the other way, it can, at least for me and for a lot of people I play with, it can get boring too. They're like, what'd you roll? 13. Miss. Okay, so it does 6 points of damage. What kind? Bludgeoning. Okay, next. It's like what is this even about, right? Like, that's not fun. So you know, I think that there's an art to deciding when you pull the poetry lever, right? Like, when do you press that button? And if you're running a horror campaign, or if you're running a horror adventure, I think the best thing to do is to pull out the poetry at the moments when it's supposed to be scary, so that you don't spend a lot of time on the majestic vistas and the way that the pine trees seem to caress the mountainside with the swaying breeze, right? Because that, it's cool, but that's not scary, and you only have so much of an economy for poetics. And if the adventure is supposed to be scary, you have to spend this on that, right? Don't spend it on how cute the horse is or whatever, right? Whereas, if you're doing an adventure in the Feywild, you want to make sure that linguistic economy is spent on cute stuff and funny stuff, right? Because that's kind of what Feywild things are about, or at least the way that I understand it. I like scary fairies, but those guys are in the Shadowfell. Come on. Scary fairies are in the Shadowfell. That's where they are. In the same way that tap dancing undead, skeletons with bowler caps and cigars, those are in the Feywild. Those are not in a Ravenloft domain, right? Silly skeletons, Feywild. Scary fairies, Shadowfell, right? That's the way it works. I didn't make the rules. Chris Perkins did. What else do we got? We just do a blend between old 5e and new 5e. That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, here is the live. Oh yeah, sorry. I had a false start. I tried to go live, and then for whatever reason it wouldn't pick up the microphone that I use for all of my videos. It's picking up the microphone that's on this camera here. Hi, Sam. Sam is Sam Fontaine Studios. Great cool artist, and he did all the awesome cartography and character art in our game, King in Yellow game. Odd question. I love odd questions. As a dungeon master, what is your favorite tool? Oh wait, no, I already did that one. Sorry. Athletics already has so little. Why would they take grappling away from it or make it harder on it? Yeah, that's a good question too. Like I have to say, it's weird that in an adventure game, strength is almost always a dump stat. But it is, and yeah. I have no mouth, but I must scream is a bit too much for D&D. I think the safety cards would be flying. Yeah. I would, without irony, I would run that for like Bluebeard's Bride. At least from what I understand. Again, I just confess that I haven't read the story. I've seen like Tale Foundry's summary of it and other people's discussions of it, and so I've absorbed enough popular knowledge to at least know the major premise. And with knowledge of that major premise, it does seem like if you wanted to adapt Harlan Ellison's I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream to a game, like a role-playing game, you would do it with Bluebeard's Bride, because that's the one where it's kind of an exploratory, interaction with stuff, where the more you explore, the more disturbing it is, and it presses your buttons, and you're supposed to conclude, based on how uncomfortable you are, whether you think something's up with this or not. I don't know how you'd fill it in and make the computer the Bluebeard and stuff. That would take some work. I love that they did a game for I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream that goes with the short story. Oh, did they? Oh, damn. Is it called that? Tell me. Yeah, I'd be curious. For sure, but the psychological aspects are very good for study or taking. Yeah. I mean, just ideas for, and this happens a lot too. Very frequently when I'm coming up with a Ravenloft video, I start out with something that's impossible to adapt into a Ravenloft adventure or any D&D adventure. It's just not the kind of medium for it, right? Like a horror story that's crucially written in the second person or something. It could be really hard to adapt. And so what I'll do is I'll kind of chew on that, and I'll think of something that's adjacent and similar, and then that'll remind me of something else, and then believe it or not, I spent like 4 months thinking about bird horror. Like, I was just thinking about horror that had to do with birds. And I thought that's because I really thought I was going to do a bird-themed domain, and it was going to be the Wildlands. I thought it was going to be like the Wildlands, birds, right? And it just didn't work out that way. I read lots of cool stuff, and I got lots of inspiration, but none of it clicked. And then I ended up doing a different thing. And then like a week later, I did the Tower of Ravens, and then all of a sudden, all that bird stuff just came like falling like a hunk of Tetris blocks. And then it was like, oh, this is where all that stuff goes. Okay, I'll put that here. Oh, it's a computer game. Oh, okay.
I use Ted's hero complex and his perspective of his own role for a character, for an NPC. Yeah, that's like characters and elements of stories that are otherwise difficult to adapt can be taken kind of like piecemeal. Like maybe not the story would make a good plot for an adventure, but this one guy, you know, computer game. Okay, I think there's a shift. 2014 was designed. I think there is a shift. 2014 was designed for you to play and build your own world, and with things like Critical Role, that has shifted to more of a choose your own adventure path on Rails approach. Everything pre-built for you, whether you like the political commentary or not. I don't know about. I actually think a lot of like the politics is like sort of outside of the actual game products. I don't really see any politics in the game products. I think I mean I would even criticize a lack of engagement with certain aspects of political reality. But I do see what you're saying. There's merit to what you're saying in the sense that like or at least it seems to me that in 2024 there's a little less breathing room because the system is more complete. So that like 2014 had rules for chases, but they were also kind of minimal. And it's like, I don't know, do this, roll on a table. Sure, a chase is a table that you roll on. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad system, but it was also like you could see how it was like a nice clean surface. You could be like, nah, I got a better one. Check this out. And so it was inviting in that way. Here, I feel as though like it's like, and this was part of the marketing too. This isn't me saying this. They're like, no, we've looked at all the cool things that the community has put together and all of the stuff that people have come up with, and we got these focus groups together to come up with the best mechanics for chase scenes. And excuse me, it seems as if there's just less breathing room because the system is more filled in. And I don't know if that's it, right? It could just be an illusion, but I think that's some of it. The game came out in 1995. Ellison was really involved with it. Okay, that's interesting. Ellison's an interesting character. I've heard a lot of things about him that make him sound like a real jerk. Rest in peace. But then also there's this story about him. He was what was the guy? Ray. Hang on a second. Ray Palmer. Yeah. From this book, The Man from Mars, Ray Palmer's Amazing Pulp Journey. If you remember the video I did on Jaricia, I was really interested in this weird 20th century mythology of the Darrow that came from Richard Shaver and his like a weird relationship with a guy who ran Amazing Stories and kind of turned it into like a conspiracy magazine for a while. And yeah, like I was interested in that kind of stuff. And I guess there was an occasion when Harlan Ellison cornered Ray Palmer in an elevator and physically threatened him and said, either you confess to the sci-fi community that you're a grifter, or I'm going to kick your ass right here. Excuse my language. And I don't know. I don't blame anyone for wanting to get out of an elevator as soon as Harlan Ellison entered it, at least from what I can hear about him. But also that's kind of a funny story because it sounds as though Ray Palmer was kind of a grifter and he was kind of like violating like a certain kind of standard that was frustrating sci-fi writers who wanted to be taken as literary, work, like whose work wanted to be taken seriously as literature. And it, I don't know. It was a funny story, I guess. I check. Yeah, he voiced AM. Oh, cool. That's neat. And as I mentioned in the Jaricia video, there's a reference to the Shaver mystery, so-called Shaver mystery, from A to Z in the chocolate alphabet. There's E is for the elevator people. Have a good evening. Time for work. Have a good shift or a good day at work, John. And thanks for joining us. Yeah. Sorry, I got started a little bit late here. Again, I had some technical problems. Once the stream ends, I will go back through and I'll delete the posts and stuff that redirects people to the wrong live stream. But it's working now, so that's good. I guess in the future I'll make sure that when I go live on YouTube, I won't use the Blue Yeti mic. I'll use the mic that's attached to the camera. Are there any ideas or requests for, Ravenloft videos, further content? What's my PhD in? I got my PhD in philosophy from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in 2010. I have published my research in Analysis, the Southern Journal of Philosophy, Australasian Journal of Philosophy, Dialectica, and Thought. I've got I've got an article that's under review now for I think it's the London Journal of Aesthetics. It's a co-authored piece with a colleague, Meg Wallace. It's about Borges on immortality. Most of my research is on metaphysics, sort of analytic kind of metaphysics. I don't buy into the alleged distinction between so-called analytic and continental philosophy. That's like a distinction of superficial style that's a century old at this point. It doesn't matter. But I certainly, do the kinds of metaphysics that are associated with, David Lewis, and thinking about immanent versus transcendent universals and possible worlds, and how large is your ontology, and what's your criterion of ontological commitment, and that stuff too. I also do ancient Greek philosophy. I wrote my dissertation on teleological explanation in Plato and Aristotle, and how that could be articulated in a contemporary vernacular to apply to puzzles in metaphysics that people are into these days. Stuff like, what does teleology have to do with the special composition question, things like that. I guess, there's do you call yourself a philosopher? Yeah, it's weird to say yes, I'm a philosopher, because in popular culture it's like, what does that mean? You're unemployed or something, or what? But it's like calling yourself a poet. Like what else would you call yourself if you got your doctorate in literature and your specialty is poetry and poetic composition? Like, what else could you call yourself? You are a poet. And likewise, if you spent years getting an advanced degree, you got your doctorate in philosophy, and you're specifically someone who works in philosophy and who engages with the journals and the conference circuit, and you're not just doing its history. Well, yeah, the name of the work that you do is philosophy, so you're a philosopher. It sounds weird. It does sound weird. Like, I can't count how many times people have given me like a weird eye when I show up at like a friend's gathering or party or something. I'm like, oh, I'm a philosopher. Well, like usually I'd just say something like, oh, I'm faculty over at Virginia Tech or whatever. I'd say I'm faculty there. And then they'll ask faculty in what, and then I say philosophy, and then then I have bridged the gap. Then I have explained what I do without saying I am a philosopher. Which philosophers am I most inspired by? I guess since I see the field as like an ongoing kind of thing, a lot of my favorite philosophers are just folks that do philosophy now. When I was writing more philosophy, I really enjoyed the work of Jonathan Schaffer, the philosopher, not the guitarist from Iced Earth. Yeah, and David Lewis, of course. Everybody loves David Lewis. You've got stuff that Ted Sider worked on. I like Mark Hinchliff. These are all. I don't expect you to know these folks. These are like analytic metaphysicians and stuff. They've done a lot of contemporary stuff. I mean, historically speaking, a lot of my favorite philosophers are folks I don't always see eye to eye with on things. I really like Plato and Aristotle to read and to study and critique and expound on. And the Neoplatonists are really cool, and they're also exhausting to read. Like if you want to try reading Proclus, try actually reading that guy. It's exhausting, but it's fruitful to get into. And I guess I like lots of sort of techie metaphysical philosophers that posit a wealth of immaterial beings and relationships between those beings in order to solve metaphysical puzzles and explain ordinary stuff that probably shouldn't need explaining. How come things change? Why does time flow? Stuff like that. I got the same side eye when I say I play Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Although, you shouldn't be getting that these days, because late 2023, role-playing games and board games and card games together were a $22 billion global industry. End of last year, they're a $44 billion global industry. I think we're gonna witness some things in the in the future of sort of the TTRPG market. I think a lot of people are about to try things other than 5e. I think a lot of people are going to try out another system, Call of Cthulhu, Daggerheart, Merkborg, whatever it's going to be a pretty good year, I think, for indie RPGs, because it's a slow year for 5e, and every year it's slow for 5e. It's a bigger year for the local, like, little guys and gals and bees. But the space is just growing. I don't see like WotC growing forever, and I don't see maybe 5e will grow more and more and more and more and more, but that's because 5e is more than D&D. Like, D&D is the WotC product that they have the rights to and the license to, that has Stradvon Zorovich TM and stuff, right? That's D&D. But then 5e is the open system that is in the Creative Commons that Kobold Press and other people make stuff for. And I sort of agree with Sly Flourish here, that when it comes to 5e, there's no such thing as a third party with 5e, right? Like Wizards of the Coast are a third party to 5e at this point. They're just another company that makes stuff for 5e. Like Kobold Press makes stuff for 5e, the Dungeon Dudes, Ghostfire Gaming makes stuff for 5e. There's lots of 5e companies out there. Would I be interested in a more Lovecraftian Ravenloft adventure in a land like Timor or Bluetspur? That is interesting. I think one of the obstacles, of course, is that the kinds of protagonists you find in Lovecraft stories are not the kinds of protagonists that you tend to find in D&D adventures, because the protagonists you find in D&D, the protagonists that you tend to find in D&D adventures survive. They survive the adventure, and Lovecraftian protagonists are almost always doomed. So, I mean, that's not to say it can't be done, and that consideration alone isn't a forbidding consideration. The short answer is yes, I would be interested in that. But I think the way that I would want to do, it'd be difficult, because like I think one thing I would try to do with a Lovecraftian adventure for 5e, excuse me, I would want to make sure that you never got to see the Great Old One or whatever. Right, like you don't want to give a stat block to Cthulhu, because then the players are going to punch it and kick it and kill it and get it in a grapple and give it the confused condition, and it seems a little silly depending on how you think about Cthulhu, right? So the adventure would have to be, rather than making it a let's take on Cthulhu kind of adventure where that's the final boss or something, I would want to make it like an adventure where the goal is to prevent Cthulhu from being unleashed or something, right? Where like the odds of fighting Yog-Sothoth or Cthulhu or whatever, that's not even in the cards, really, right? Because again, 5e adventurers are really powerful. If you give something a stat block, they'll kill it. So I would think, like, maybe make it a lower level adventure, make all the tension having to do not with the Lovecraftian things you're carving limb from limb, but the Lovecraftian things that are threatened to be unleashed that you wouldn't be able to stop if they were. I would probably try something like that. Spaceship horror might be interesting for that, right? Like put some horror in Spelljammer, because you do have some. I think you do have some lineages or whatever where it's like you don't have to breathe, but the vacuum of space is pretty lethal. So that's one way to make it more dangerous. I think if you get the side eye now, it's because of Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, or the fact that D&D is like the starter set to the greater. Oh yeah, it's sort of like, oh, you play D&D, noob, right? There's that. I never. I mean, you'll never catch me with that attitude. I love it when people come to the hobby even if it's through something that popularized it in a really misleading or unfair way. I'm glad you're here. You know, like, I'm an indie RPG guy. I have ambitions to subsist in a little space in the industry of my own. I got my little gaming company. I had my little Kickstarter. I'd like to build on that. And that's, I mean, like it or not, it's impossible unless the industry has, you know, these larger fish swimming around in it. And so, like, I don't mind that WotC is drawing more and more people into the hobby. That doesn't, I'm not worried about that. I kind of like it. I would definitely just say, like, oh, well, that's awesome. I love 5e. Check out this, check out that. Also check out this other game, you know. Because, you know, let 1,000 flowers bloom. I like D&D. I love it. And also I love other games. It's funny you mentioned Cthulhu and why you don't like stat blocks. Yeah. I mean, some things you just don't want to be able to kill. At least for story reasons, right? Like a classic thing is, like, if you want something to be really frightening, like unkillable levels of frightening, then it shouldn't have a stat block. And a really good example is Strahd von Zarovich in early sections of the Curse of Strahd campaign, right? For me, Strahd doesn't have a stat block until you've done some stuff, right? Because as far as I'm concerned, there's no way you could hurt Strahd as soon as you arrive in the realm. Are you kidding me? No. Like, every attack misses. If you get a nat 20 on Strahd for some reason, then yeah, you'll do some damage that he'll instantly regenerate. He can know your location at any time. And then the way that I run Curse of Strahd, I do the Mandy mod, Dragna Carta Curse of Strahd. So like, I have these Fanes, the Fanes that are throughout Barovia. And you know, when the players cleanse the first Fane of Barovia, this takes away Strahd's omniscience. Right, Strahd loses the ability to just auto-track the PCs, and now he has to do stuff like actually cast scrying spells. Right, he has to actually, like, figure out where they are, which he didn't have to do before. And then after they restore the second Fane, Strahd now, not only does he need to actually do work to figure out where they are to track them, he also has traditional vampire weaknesses, which he didn't have before. Right, so, like, he is a little bothered by garlic now. Not in a debilitating way. He's still Strahd, but, like, he can, you know, it's like he feels like a vampire and not a god. And then when they cleanse that third and final Fane, when the PCs cleanse the final Fane, that's when Strahd has a stat block. That's when he can actually be measured and quantified, and he could be subjected to a condition or whatever. And also, conveniently, at that point, that's when you have to go to Castle Ravenloft to fight him, because that's when he's gonna. He will know that you've cleansed the 3 Fanes, and he will say, I'm not going out there anymore. You think I'm stupid? No, I'm going to stay in my castle where I can walk through the walls. That's where I'm going to stay. And they can come and fight me if they can, if they think they can. I'll still have the advantage here. I'll be fine. I'm Strahd, right? But that's the way that I run it, and that's an example of when you don't want to give something a stat block and when you do. You know, if it's a talky villain that's supposed to have an arc throughout the entire campaign, and the campaign rests on him not being hurt early on, right? Like, then don't give your big bad evil guy a stat block early on. Now is that cheating? Well, I mean, if you don't give them a stat block early on, you should also take care not to put them in a situation where it would, you know, where their lack of a stat block would be conspicuous. Right, like you don't want to flout that fact, right? Because then the players will feel like you're not being fair, right? You know, you're taking more than your leeway as a DM. You're giving more than the allotted plot armor to your evil guy. You know, so be sparing with how much they do when they have no stat block. You know, show up, say scary things, laugh at your spell casting, stuff like that. Hour of the Raven and his group did a bunch of Spelljammer type Ravenloft realms. I know, I reviewed it. That's the what was it called? The Dread Space, something like that. There's a bunch of kind of like star system domains, like a bunch of different weird alien planets. There was one that felt a lot like kind of 30 Days of Night. Dread Space. Thank you. Yeah. I like that. I like the release. I would the only critiques I had are first that there was just like maybe 1 or 2 domains where I think the description could be a little streamlined, just a little. And then there's the AI art stuff, which is just, I don't like AI art. I don't like it. I like real artists. even when the A art is good, it's not. It's just like serviceable. So, you know, like people do what they want to do, but I will also do what I want to do, and I will buy what I want to buy. And I want to be charitable and good to Gabriel from Hour of the Raven, because his stuff is very good and I like him. And you know, you should support it. And the adventure and the materials that are in Dread Space is also really cool. But I did, in my review, you can check it out, it's on this channel. In my review, I did give, you know, a qualified thumbs up for it, because I think it's cool. But I was like, I don't want this especially now. It's so dated. It looks like it's like fractally splotchy Midjourney stuff. It's like the stuff that you would do for fun with crayon when it was new, like 4 years ago or whatever, 3 years ago. But yeah, Dread Space was great. I do like sci-fi horror. One of the so I'm enjoying Merkborg a lot. I run it a lot. This game, Death in Space. This is basically like kind of like the Space Pirate Borg, I want to say, because it's basically just Merkborg in space, but with, you know, vehicle combat rules, ship combat rules. You know, and Pirate Borg is basically Merkborg on the sea with ship combat rules. So they're very, very similar. I like the universe and the feel of the lore of Death in Space. I think that's a neat. It's a very neat, bleak sort of heat death of the universe kind of thing. And I would want to. I don't know. I probably put my brain next to that book on the shelf when I'm thinking about space horror stuff. When it comes to Ravenloft, it's tricky. I mean, I guess I mean, with how Ravenloft has changed, I guess it's not as tricky now, because, you know, we're pretty permissive with what a domain of dread can be. You know, all it needs to be is kind of like a genre of. It needs to encapsulate a genre of horror fiction. Have a Dark Lord who's sort of tortured by the thing that makes them the Dark Lord in some way or other, and, you know, if you like, a unique way to close the borders, but even that's not necessary. So you could have a Space Ravenloft Domains, or Space Ravenloft Domain, without too much trouble. I don't know what I would do for one, though. I mean, for me, like, space is just scary. Like, like just being in space, right? There's just millions of miles of nothing. It's that's enough for me. But I guess, you know, this is also one thing that's weird, is like, I love space monsters and space aliens, especially when they're horrific. But there's also something at the end of the day that's kind of like optimistic about finding a space monster, right? Because even if it's going to rip your brains out and lay eggs in you or whatever, it's like, oh, there is other life in the universe. I was worried we were the only ones, right? Like no matter how terrible it is, you know, finding life in the universe that's not from Earth is kind of good, right? Like, I think that it really takes like some careful and brilliant writing to imply otherwise. And this is why a lot of these works of horror fiction, sci-fi horror, are so memorable, is that the monster is so distractingly evil or distractingly gross that like the relief at there being other life in the universe doesn't even hit you. Ooh, yeah, hey, thanks for the suggestion. I had not considered doing that. But maybe a video about dark gifts in Ravenloft would be good. There's a topic I've wanted to do a video about concerning Ravenloft that's related to this, and it has to do with where is the locus of horror in your game? And one thing I wanted to do was contrast at least the initial vision of Ravenloft and Vampire the Masquerade. Because at least in the 1990s, and I'm giving away my age here, but I think they were doing very different things, right? Because I think that, like, in Ravenloft, the idea is we have vampires and they are scary monsters, right? And so we're going to tell adventures where you are afraid of them, right? They are otherworldly, scary things that you cannot understand or fathom. They are the other, and they're horrifying, right? And that's the Ravenloft angle on monsters, on like vampires. And then the Vampire the Masquerade, White Wolf, you know, World of Darkness angle was more like, it's not in this game we have scary monsters that are vampires is in this game, you can be a scary vampire monster. It's awesome. You get to know what it's like to be a vampire. It's sweet. It's right. It's edgy, right? And I think that there's. And tell me if this is a bad opinion. I could self-criticize. I could be made to self-criticize on this, but I don't know if these work together, right? I don't know if they work together. Hey, Ravenloft. Hey, Jason. Because I think like the more that you allow your players to be the vampire, the harder it is to make the vampire into an otherworldly, incomprehensibly evil thing, right? So, like, if vampires are supposed to really be horrific, it seems like you shouldn't let your players be them, right? Because otherwise, you're going to risk having this happen, right? You describe, oh, a vampire steps out of, I mean, you're not going to call it a vampire. You're going to use a poetic description. But in any case, the monster steps out of the shadows. The players realize it's a vampire. And then they're like, wait, maybe it's not a scary vampire. Maybe it's like Gary, the nice one who's in our party. Maybe it's like Gary, the friendly vampire, right? And so the fact that they know Gary, who's a PC with the Dampier background or whatever, right? Like that kind of like undercuts the effect that the vampire is supposed to have, right? If you know, like if your next door neighbor is a vampire, then Strahd von Zarovich isn't so scary for being one, is he? Right? And so that was one tension that I've noticed. It kind of got massaged or maybe even ignored in like kind of I want to say it was more towards Van Richten's guide, but it's kind of throughout. I have to say that like I've run Curse of Strahd several times, and it's always weird because like no matter what you say in session 0, and don't take offense if you played Curse of Strahd with me, okay? But like no matter what you say in session 0, right? If you say, listen, I want you guys to be the heroes. I want you to be the good guys. I want you to be candles in the dark. I want you to be those hopeful points of light that other people who are mired in darkness can look up to and hope for. I want you to be those sorts of characters. And then session 1 begins and it's like, check out my edgelord grimdark character. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Excuse me. Like, what are you doing, man? Right? Like I just said, I want you to be candles in the dark. I want you to be good guys. I want you to be heroes. I want you to believe in things and be optimists and have stuff for. Why are you all satanic witches? What is this? And the answer is always the same. The answer is like, because it's Ravenloft. Like, but no, Ravenloft, the world is scary, not you. It's not Vampire the Masquerade. You're not supposed to be the scary guys. Strahd is the scary guy. You're supposed to be the whatever. And you know, this happens a few times, and eventually you just say, ah, fuck it. Like, whatever. We're all grimdark. We're all grimdark here. Everyone is a goth. It's fine. Vampire versus vampire. Are you an undead zombie guy? Okay, cool. You can be Eddie from the Iron Maiden album covers, and you can fight other zombies. Why not? Right? And that's kind of like I don't know. It might be a hot take or something, but I think that horror campaigns work a lot better, or at least of a certain kind. Certain kinds of horror campaigns work better if you don't have literally everyone being a monster, right? Because then it's like, what's a monster anyway? Then what's the hell's the point here? What are we? I mean, and I guess this is like is, you know, there's a difference between like a horror adventure and like a Halloween party, maybe. And look, I love Halloween parties. I love all the stuff. I love being the monster. I love Vampire the Masquerade. I love all those things. But I just feel like there's a tension. There's like a tension between a scary, horrific setting for your PCs to be horror protagonists in, and you know, the horrific PC who is Blade from Marvel Comics or whatever. Or you know, Vampire Hunter D or whatever. Like, and again, I like grimdark heroes. I like edgelord heroes and stuff. That's cool. But I just think there's a tension. It seems like there's a tension. Is there a tension? You think there's a tension? Maybe there's not a tension. Let's see. Finding an alien monster is hopeful. Immediately thought of the movie Life. Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one yet. I think I saw like a Red Letter Media review or something, and they said the characters kept making stupid decisions, and so I never watch or not. Sometimes I'll watch a movie based on their recommendations. I almost never forego movies based on their rejections. But I still have to see that one. The more monstrous the players become, the less horrific the world is. Yeah, because you have a taste for what it is to be a monster. They become sympathetic. And again, I like sympathetic monsters too, right? There's lots of ways you could do horror, but there's at least one way of doing horror that Ravenloft pitches, and it wouldn't work as well if you're also if you eat brains for breakfast or whatever. Power checks was the original response to people playing monsters. Yeah. And I also agree, the body horror context also works. If it's like David Cronenberg's The Fly or something, where it's like, oh yeah, you can play a monster. You think that's going to be fun? It's like having cancer. But sure, yeah, you can be a monster. Have fun watching your limbs melt and stuff like that. That's that's an aspect you could pursue. You can see why this ties into the question about making a video about dark gifts, right? Because curses and like powers checks and dark gifts, it does seem like curses and dark gifts are kind of like the 5th edition version of the powers check that we had, the percentage die roll that you would have in 2nd edition, and 3rd and 4th edition. I think in 4th. What? You mean I can't play Roger McStabbing, half angel, half demon, world ender rogue? I mean, it's going to make all my half demons less scary, Roger. I'm sorry. Yeah, exactly. You got it. You got it. You can if you are in middle school. Yeah. And I don't mean to imply that if you have a cool dark hero concept that you're immature or anything. But we also all recognize that there is an immature way to do those things. That it is sometimes common. It is more Evil Dead than it is Day of the Dead. Yeah. That's cool. Those are both good, great films. I have to say, I like the original Evil Dead, Romero's Evil Dead. I mean, more than the. Oh no, I'm thinking of Dawn of the Dead is what I was thinking of. The evil. Oh well, the original Sam Raimi Evil Dead is better than. I haven't seen the Evil Dead. I like Evil Dead too much. I didn't want to see a remake of it. Why did you remake that? Remake a crappy movie. Take movies that sucked the first time around and remake those. Don't take classics. Dawn of the Dead works. Dawn of the Dead, the Zack Snyder one. I have to say, I saw it in theaters. I loved it. I enjoyed it, and I still think it's not a bad zombie movie. It's right up there with zombie action. But there's things that like haven't survived the most the most critical reflections. As I look back on it, I see like little things where it's like, oh, well, that's kind of that wasn't a it's just this is just part of one of the things that happens as media ages and as we gain perspective and things is that sometimes stuff ages less well than it should. But it's yeah, I like the original Dawn of the Dead a lot too. A cool curse of superpowers can take away from the horror intention, but it also paints with fears of losing yourself depending on how you do it. Yeah, and I think this dovetails nicely with Brian's comment on like body horror. It doesn't have to be that, but like think about Tetsuo at the end of Akira. I can't believe I'm I'm the last guy to like talk about anime, but at the end of Akira, you've got Tetsuo. He's got like superpowers, and it's also horrific, and it's not just like it's gross, but it's like, is he gonna lose himself to this stuff, right? Like it's like he can barely control it. Does he have powers, or are there some powers that have now got him? I saw some of the dark gifts that do seem to have that like potential. I think you would need to introduce mechanics that aren't readily there in Van Richtensky, but hey, that's fun. So that's cool. but there's there's like a symbiote. There's like a symbiote dark gift. It's like you've got like venom or someone in you, and like they talk to you, and they can take over your body, and you get superpowers. But then you could lose your identity to them. I can see that being a thing. I've been talking for a while. It's a pretty good stream. This is a fun little thing. Thanks for jumping on and asking questions, folks. Apologies that I got the false start and my audio didn't work at first. Other questions, comments? anything I should talk about while I'm on here, you do have the option to just get me to talk about anything. This is one of the perils of being a smaller YouTube channel, is that people attend your live chats. You kind of have to talk about what they bring up. I'm not H-Bomber guy. I don't have that. Thank you for the discussion. So what's up with Orwell? Oh, I don't think he's a very good writer. It's both his. I don't think of him as a very talented or moving writer, and then there's also just kind of the perspective that Orwell took in his writing. I guess, and yeah. Speaking of hot takes, I really don't care for Animal Farm. 1984 is its own thing. I'm also not a fan of, but like I have some pretty harsh criticisms of Animal Farm just because it's supposed to be like a novel that critiques socialism that rests on the foundation that it rests on the metaphor that workers are dumb animals that can't build their own society is what the book rests on. That's the foundational metaphor, right? The foundational metaphor is like socialism. That's like barnyard animals trying to run the farm, right? That's the metaphor, and it's kind of gross. Not a fan. I'm also not a fan that the Battle of the Windmill was supposed to represent Operation Barbarossa, and if you recall, in real life, Operation Barbarossa was a horrific, hideous, genocidal thing, and in Animal Farm, it was this thing that you could kind of blame both sides for, which you're not supposed to be able to do with things like crimes like that. So there's some unsavory things, I think, and I think people are encouraged to overlook those unsavory things about Orwell because Orwell had historical utility during the Cold War as sort of a functioning piece of American foreign sort of cultural stuff, American cultural stuff. Everyone in his unit feared they would go to yeah. And so it's like there's real history and I don't know. I better restrain myself. I've got there are people who thoughtfully critique Orwell at length. I certainly could. I don't know if I want to do so on my D&D channel. I certainly don't want to imply that if you are a person who was brought to a worldly perspective by reading books that included Orwell, it's like that anything against you or anything like that. I tend to see Orwell as having like a lot more in common with like, I don't know, Ayn Rand than with any writer whose work I enjoy. If that makes sense. Like I see just kind of like one of these kind of mid 20th century post-war American celebrated era kind of novelists. I just finished reading Titus Groan not long ago by Mervyn Peake. That's some lovable post-war literature that's purely fantasy, purely kind of fantastical. By the way, if you haven't read Titus Groan or if you haven't read any of the Gormenghast books, they're good. They're so good. I'm in the middle of Gormenghast. Do not need to continue. It's an easy metaphor that some people kind of understand. Yeah. There's a lot of and there are a lot of people whose perspective, they've learned things that have nothing to do with what Orwell was intending to write about that might be worth learning and stuff. You never know what people get from your books. But I would like to see more role-playing people get up with Mervyn Peake, right? People who want to design adventures and world build, and maybe I shouldn't say that. Leave Mervyn Peake alone. But I really like the Gormenghast world. The first two books, at least the first book and the second one so far, are really beautiful. It really makes me want to try to write some kind of thing, like role-playing thing for Castle Gormenghast. But it wouldn't. I don't think 5e would work well for it though, because Gormenghast is very much focused on the inner lives of the inhabitants who are separated from each other by their private thoughts, and how these empty rituals that date back further than anyone can remember are kind of the only things keeping them together, and the castle that's falling apart and still standing is kind of like a metaphor for the family inside of it. And like that's hard to like roll a d20. Like you have to do some work for that kind of thing. Hot take, stir the pot. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mr. Vincent, for asking. Gormangast also has the problem with the author going insane in the third book. Oh, is that so? Oh, and hello, Mr. Welch. I was not aware of that. I knew that, unfortunately, Mervyn Peake was declining in health and that he was suffering from cancer during the composition of the third book, and when he was writing notes for the fourth one that his widow finished. Oh, you were thinking of the Bay of Pigs. I was wondering if that was it, because I was like, wait a minute, it sounds like the Bay of Pigs, but I wasn't. Yeah. Are there certain bits of D&D lore that grind my gears? Ooh. For me, it's Driders not occupying a place of prominence despite their god touching the Drow and making them look more like them. Yeah, that never ground my gears. Yeah, but that is a funny thing about the lore, right? Like here's the thing. Like, this is okay. Actually, speaking of gears being ground, there's a lot to say about the Drow. I mean, and a lot to say about Wizards' failure to engage with real criticisms of how the Drow were handled. Instead of engaging with the criticism in a meaningful way, I think they just kind of like, they just sort of noped out of it. And Super Geek Mike has a video on that where I think he mostly kind of has the right sort of response to it. But yeah, with the Drow, like, here's one thing that, unrelated to the cultural stuff, I would say it's weird that the Drow don't use giant spiders for things, right? Because they love spiders, they worship spiders, spiders are sacred to them. And you might think, like the lore is supposed to go like this. Yes, spiders are so sacred, they would never use them as mere beasts of burden. But, if you take a look at real societies where certain kinds of animals are sacred, which animals are sacred and why? Right? Go to Nepal, right? Or you don't have to go to Nepal. Read about Nepal, or read about the sacredness of cattle in certain societies in India, right? India is a very culturally diverse place. There's all kinds of different, just different families and communities of speakers of different versions of Urdu and Hindi they're speaking. But like just because a culture considers an animal sacred doesn't mean it's hands off, right? Like, if you use yaks for their milk and for transportation and for agriculture and for plowing and for manure, right? And like the yak may very well be sacred in your culture, and you may also have a prohibition against eating them, right? Like, that's a very believable way for the yak to be sacred, is that you're always drinking yak's milk and riding around on yaks, but you would never dare strike one or eat one, right? And why aren't spiders like that with the Drow? Why is it like, oh no, spiders are so sacred, we never use them? What? God, you should have. I want Drow riding on giant spiders. I want spider riding Drow. Darn it! And I think the canon that says no, the Drow would never use spiders like that is just too silly. It's just, think of it this way: how cool is it to have a Drow riding a spider? How cool is the culture that says no, we can't do that? Which of these is cooler? Right? This one is. Right? It's just cooler. Right? I don't know. There's a. I didn't think that would be my answer, but there's a bit of lore that kind of grinds my gears. I guess a bit less in a less popular way. Yeah, there's a lot to say about them. Yeah, it's taboo to eat horse in some places, but not other places. Same thing with dogs or cats. Right? Like there are cultures, including the one I live in, where you would never dream of eating a certain kind of animal that you keep as a pet or whatever. And then there's other cultures where it's like, we don't have those as pets. Why would you keep, right? And it's just different. But yeah, like here's I guess another hot take might be dragons. Some things to say about 5e kind of ignores how Lolth abuses the whole of the drow. Yeah, it's yeah, and that's part of that's one of the things that kind of sucks too, is that they didn't really make it clear that Lolth, that the evil of Lolth as a deity is connected to like institutional abuse and stuff like that, so that it's not like oh no, the drow are an evil race kind of thing, right? Like that's they didn't, yeah, and that does ignore the see, that's one of the things, is that like if you have a kind of bioessentialism about alignment, then it actually leaves it unfortunately precludes the really interesting possibility of institutional abuse and institutional injustice and stuff, which is cool. And in Kazakhstan, they drink fermented mare's milk, which tastes like slightly alcoholic smoked cheese. Does it? That might be the only way someone would ever make fermented mare's milk sound tasty to me. Like if you said, "Do you want to drink that?" I'd be like, "Nah." But then you said, "Tastes like alcoholic smoked cheese." Oh, hand it, please. I guess one other thing. So I like, when it comes to dragons, I like dragons to be unique individuals. So I tend to think of like chromatic and metallic colored dragons. I tend to think of them as like ways that you could make your one dragon be, right? Like I don't think about it as like, oh, there are red dragons. They're a whole species. They're like, red macaws or something, right? Like instead, I think there's like individual dragons out there. They're magical beings with unique ways of being created. Maybe one of them is red and breathes fire, or maybe one of them is blue and breathes fire, or whatever. But like the idea is that they would be unique, like deities. They would have sort of, a lot of non-repeatable features. And the stat blocks for an amethyst dragon or a topaz dragon or a black dragon, I think of those stat blocks as just like ways that you could like tailor the dragons that are actually in your world. I like dragons like that, and I realize that's the very opposite of Dragonlance, right? Dragonlance took the D&D dragons and really made them into the world, and I like Dragonlance too. That's also cool. I think that if it weren't for Dragonlance, I wouldn't have gotten into Ravenloft, because I was like 12 years old, and I'm reading the Dragonlance novels by Margaret Weiss and Terry Hickman, and then you come across Lord Soth. I think Lord Soth makes his appearance in Dragons of Winter Night, one that has like Kitiara Uthmatar on the cover, and then like Soth is in there for a little bit, and you're like, that Soth guy is cool. And then I checked out Knight of the Black Rose by James Lauder, and this is how I like this and some other thing is how I discovered Ravenloft. I'm like, oh, this is, and then I sort of is the distracted boyfriend meme. I was holding hands with Dragonlance, and I was like turning around to check out Ravenloft. Now I'm who I am on YouTube. Yeah, dragons should be treated as Lovecraftian creatures. Actually have a fear aura. Yeah, I like the fear aura. I like creatures that have that. Because it's compatible with having high fantasy heroics too, right? Like you can have high fantasy heroics and still have frightened heroes. What makes it high fantasy is that they just get frightened, and then to like next turn they shake it off with a successful save. That's how fear affects heroes. That works. Drow not riding spiders. That's the point of anger. Good hill to die on. Yeah. Thank you. Well, Soth is kind of the Boba Fett of Dragonlance. Yeah, it's true. That's a good analogy too. In terms of character design. What a cool character design. Character? Maybe? How much of them are you considering? Oh, institutional injustice. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Yeah. Well, okay. So there was a workshop at Necronomicon in August of 2024 that I attended, called "The Decadent Weird," and it was about the influence of the Parisian sort of 19th century French decadent movement on weird fiction. And of course, Robert W. Chambers, The King in Yellow, was at the very center of that stuff. But there's also, talking about Huysmans Au Rebours and Baudelaire and some, like that creepy novel, The Future Eve, right? There's a lot of stuff in there. And Ken Hite was on that panel. And one of the things that Ken Hite mentioned was that the Drow were kind of a like decadent society par excellence, in the sense that, if there's something indulgent, the Drow are indulging in it. If there's a pleasure, the Drow have cultivated it. If there's a way to make it sexy, Drow do it in a way that's all sexy, right? Like their ultimate lascivious in like they're doing drugs, they're experimenting with things, they're dressing in provocative ways, they're you can't tell the difference between an ordinary interaction between a Drow house mother and her servants and a freaking BDSM session, right? The way that the Drow house mothers will talk to the you male grovel, right? You're is this someone's, right? The Drow are one cool thing about them, and is they have this decadence thing really down. I play in Greyhawk, always have. That's a fucking world. Forgotten Realms was fine, but all the cool crap from Greyhawk was lifted and placed there and twisted different. Forgotten Realms is fine if that's your jam. Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, one of the things that was incorporated into Greyhawk was Clark Ashton Smith's fictional version of medieval France called Averoigne, or Averon, or as Matt Colville calls it, Averon. I can start saying that word, but I can't finish. But that setting by Clark Ashton Smith, I thought it was incorporated into Greyhawk because there was this accessory for first edition, Night Howlers, and this is one of the first D&D products to have lycanthropy as a player option, and it's basically set in medieval France. It has a French glossary in it, and it has a map of these cities and towns, and it includes somewhere called New Averon or Averoigne or I can start saying that word, but I can't finish it. But yeah, I think. Oh, did you have that too, Brian? Yeah, this is cool. It's got two booklets in it plus the cover. I take it out of the thing. It's got the Night Howlers. Yeah, Night Howlers thing. And this has got the it's got the campaign setting. And yeah, you see it's got a bunch of French words on the back, glossary and pronunciation guide. Over here it's oui, yes, no, I can't. But this is sort of the campaign setting that looks like kind of medieval France with werewolves everywhere. It's got a timeline. It's got some wicked looking art. Look at this. Look at this. He's having a little munch. He's having a snacko. He's a hungry pupper. All right. And then we got the Werewolves Manual, which has a special So You're a Werewolf character sheet on the back. And one of the things that was fun, I'm going to mention this in the Nova Vasa video, by the way. You get a preview of the Nova Vasa. Averon with a French accent is how. Okay. I will. I will accept that. I asked I had an argument with my book club about this. I went and I asked my professor of French in my Department of Languages and Literature how to say it, and he said my way was fine too. But it's kind of like how maybe it's correct to say burrito, but you should probably just say burrito if you're in the U.S. I don't know, but just here to say thank you. I ran your Blitzburg campaign, speaking of weird names, with some changes, and it was great. Thanks, Leandro. Thank you. I really enjoy your content. Thank you very much. This is a work of love. Nova Vasa, will you be going with 5e or pre-5e? I'm going to be going with Nova Vasa. So one of the I'm going to be going. I'm going to be going with 5e. I like one of the things that they did in Van Richten's guide with Nova Vasa. It's only a sentence, but it's also a sparsely described domain. In Van Richten's guide, they say that there's that the Dark Lord, she doesn't just have a Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde thing going on. She is an XP for Jekyll and Hyde, but it like that alteration that is reflected at the level of policy. So it's like when she's in her Jekyll mode, like her people are like peaceful, or she leads them to be peaceful and behave peacefully. But then when she's in her Malkin, Mr. Hyde mode, then she like decrees that the time is for bloodshed and stuff. And that was like a detail they put in Nova Vasa in Van Richten's guide that I didn't think was really in the original one that I remember. What I remember was that Tristan Hierogard would fall in love with a servant lady, and then Malkin would kill her, and then the family covers it up, and that keeps happening. And so in a way, the second edition version of Nova Vasa was kind of like the horror of the domain was kind of localized to the Dark Lord. So you would have to set up a adventure that was like a whodunit or whatever. Whereas with this other version, the Van Richten's guide version of Nova Vasa, it's more like the land itself is kind of a Jekyll and Hyde thing. And then some folks pointed out that there was a theme of colonialism in the frontier, and I thought about that, and yeah, I can think there's some pretty rich ideas involving people living under colonialism and being treated with a Jekyll and Hyde set of policies. So I'm working on that. But one thing I wanted to mention at the beginning that I was thinking about here from this is that in D&D originally, right, you had your alignment languages. You had alignment languages, and because in the rules for Night Howlers, a lycanthrope PC changes their alignment when they go through their change and the full moon. So a werewolf becomes chaotically aligned, right? When they're in their werewolf mode, their beast mode or whatever. And what that would mean then is that you suddenly acquire a new language on the full moon, like you forgot how to speak lawful, and instead you learn to speak chaotic. And the answer is yeah. And I thought that was kind of a neat idea, and it gave me some ideas about Nova Vasa, and like the idea is like sort of, well, we talk one way sometimes and we talk another way other times. I was also thinking a lot about the Purge movies. Not that I am fond of those movies or like have thought a lot about them, but when you take a look at the Purge films, you have this kind of like, okay, everybody peaceful, Jekyll, 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 Purge, hide, everybody hide, Mr. Hyde, rah! Right? And so I was thinking like, yeah, you could think about the Purge and sort of like that as being a potential inspiration for Nova Vasa. I'm excited to do Forlorn because I've got a much more solid script for that one. That one's based it's based on the Doctor Who episode, but it's a good one. So from 1987, 88. But it's got some tiny time travel-y stuff in it, and I think it's a nice way to bridge the gap between what we've got in Van Richten's guide, which is sort of like Artificer Tristan, and I have an Aggie right behind me. Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, right here. Yeah, I've got the Castles Forlorn. This is the original set, by the way. This isn't the. I mean, you know, I guess I can show off, right? It's my live stream, but this is the original box set, not the reprint from DM's Guild. So it even has in this thing. It's got we've got this Winter 1993 TSR catalog, right? It's got like, oh, you can order Dragon magazine, Covenant of the Forge. It's a new Dragonlance novel coming out from 1993. It's kind of neat. There's also like a TSR marketing department response card. Pretty sure that's going to go to the dead letter department if you send it through the mail today. I do miss that logo. Yeah, I kind of got nostalgia for the 90s. We've got the Weeping Land booklet. Then we've got the Eve of Sorrows. This is kind of like this is sort of like a random encounter book, a lore book, and a sort of castle adventure kind of book, Melancholy Meetings. I love the art for the Death's Head here, the Death's Head tree. And then you've got, of course, the unfolding maps. I don't want to unfold the maps, but they're there. They're cool. I've got this and the original Feast of Goblins with everything perfectly intact. There are a few of my Ravenloft collector's items. Better fill that out. Yeah, fill out the comment card. I heard that there was a new film called Dead Mail, M-A-I-L, and it was about it's a horror movie about the dead letter department in the Post, and that sounds cool. I'm gonna have to watch that. Maybe I'll watch it tonight if it's on streaming. Oh, and you can see in the background, Jiangshi, Blood in the Banquet Hall. Also, hey, PSA. The way that you pronounce that monster is Jiangshi. Right? Like it's not Jiangshi. There's no E on the end of it. It's Jiangshi. Jiangshi. And I am not a speaker of Mandarin, but Banana Chan is, and they always emphasize this in every interview when I was watching their interviews for my iCath video. So now that it's here on camera, I may as well say it's Jiangshi. Also, hey, it's Merkborg. Merkborg. Am I the only one who does the reading? Right? Like it says right here. Right? Like right at the bottom. Right? It's there we are. And at the bottom it says Merkborg is pronounced Merkborg. You see that? It's kind of fuzzy. Right? Merkborg is Swedish for dark fort and is pronounced Merkborg. They spell it M-U-R-K. I have no idea why people keep okay, I mispronounce things a lot. You're laughing. I know it. But like they told you. I feel like I'm the only one who says Merkborg. Everyone is like, I turn on the Dungeon Dudes and they're saying Morkborg. It's R. There's also the Lost Letter Mysteries from Hallmark. What's that? Oh, is that a horror movie about missing mail? Because that's cool. Going missing in the post. I think I was a artsy like Polish horror film I saw not long ago. It was like black and white. It was really funny. I can't remember what it was, but I haven't been to the movies in a while. I tend to. I mean, okay. So one thing I've been doing is I've been brain deep in David Lynch stuff, and I think I've pretty much found out all of Lost Highway. I think I've decoded Lost Highway. I get it. I understand all of the thing now, and I'm pretty proud of that because those movies are difficult to decode. I didn't piggyback on anyone else's theory. Because if you pronounce it Morkborg, then you have Robin Williams as a cyborg. Yeah, exactly. Where's my Mork and Mindy Borg? That's I can't believe with all the Borgs out there, with like Slav Borg and Pork Borg and Orc Borg and all, nobody did Mork and Mindy Borg. Is it because of the copyright? Is that why you can't do it? Oh, comfort food. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, but I think a lot of people correctly think they're correct that Lost Highway is the story of a guy who murders his wife while not realizing, he sort of dissociated while doing it, and then he's got a fantasy that retells the event in which he's innocent. But there's these little details that people, their theories always leave out, right? Who the hell is Mr. Eddie? And why does he have two names in both the fantasy and in reality, Mr. Eddie and Dick Laurent? What's up with saying Dick Laurent is dead? Why is it important that Fred Madison tell himself through the speaker that Dick Laurent is dead at the beginning? Why is that there? There's what's up with the tailgating scene, right? These are things which I figured out. I have this theory to explain them all. It's beautiful, and I haven't seen anyone else do that. I'm waiting for Twin Perfect to come back and like do it real fast and to preempt me on this, but I guess people like harassed him off of the internet for a while or something. I feel bad for that guy. You know, I liked his interpretation of Twin Peaks. I think other interpretations are valid and good and illuminating, but I don't see why people hated him so much. It's really weird. But you did decode Lynch's insistence that pie and coffee is the best in Washington State. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I just rewatched The Return, the season 3 of Twin Peaks, and I think it's really hard to. I think even people who disagree with Twin Perfect's thesis that Twin Peaks is a self-aware TV show about the concept of television, like I think even those folks who disagree with that thesis, they still kind of accept that it's partially true for season 3, The Return, because there's just too many things in it that would make no sense unless there were that level of self-examination. Is there a show or a movie that you think is a perfect one-shot concept out of box with basically no notes you'd have to add? For me, it's 1992's Stay Tuned! Whoa! Respect. Legit. I was just talking about that the other day. In fact, I was thinking about it because I was working on a script for Saina, and that's kind of I was thinking of Stay Tuned from 1992, and I was also thinking of the Mojo verse from the X-Men. But like these kind of Stay Tuned is great because the plot is just you got sucked into a TV and now channels are being flipped out of your control and you're just gonna. It's a nice way to set a string of encounters. That's a nice encounter-based format. Okay, so answer to the question: are there any short stories or movies that I think are perfect one-shot concepts? I know I do. I'll need a second to think of one. Starbucks ruined. What did Starbucks ruin? Probably lots of things. Probably lots of things. Now I know the answer has to be yes because in the course of doing the Ravenloft videos, I must have done at least one video where I just took a story and adapted it. I mean, the Staunton Bluffs video was just an adaptation of Nicole Cushing's story, the 14th, but I don't think that was an easy or straightforward adaptation. And I think there's, some stuff. It's not that one's not a natural way to go. That was me being in love with the story and thinking that it fit the themes of the domain. I'm not picking a perfect one right now, but one I'm going to say is Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud, Ballingrud. Also, he's a resident of North Carolina, and his home was damaged in the hurricane that hit Asheville the other year. So pick up his book. But Crypt of the Moon Spider is a really weird, fantastic novella. That's just a new way of thinking about horror fantasy. It's like this. It's set on the moon, except the moon has an atmosphere and it also has forests and it has spiders. And there's like it's set in the 1920s. It's like they have like these steampunk, for lack of a better term, vehicles that go between Earth and the moon. And our protagonist or our point of view character is a woman who's, in the kind of patriarchally abusive marriages that you would associate with the 1950s. The woman's husband is taking her to drop her off at an asylum because she's depressed and he wants her to be fixed, is the idea. It's dreary and the whole novel's depressing. I mean, a lot of it's about depression, but it also has these really fantastic elements about like the silk that these moon spiders make has weird magical properties. And I'm really taken with the whole world. There's a sequel coming out this October called Cathedral of the Drowned. And I wouldn't say that this has like an adventure just stamped into it that's ready to be run as soon as you read the novella. But I would say that, like, I mean, I would find it challenging to read the novella and not have some ideas for a one shot. It's got a lot of inspiring things in it. I also want to say John Langan's The Fisherman, but also I adapted that into an adventure for my Dutchman's Creek video, and it's far from a one shot, and it also wasn't straightforward. I exercised some creative efforts on that one. Oh, The Tower by Margarita Lasky. My Tower of Ravens adventure was basically just an adaptation of that. The only difference is the precise height that the PCs travel to when they get to the outside of the tower at the top, and the turning into bird monsters at the end. But otherwise, I just took The Tower by Margarita Lasky. So that's like a good short story. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love Tanith Lee. She has this. Kill the Dead is a really cool novel. I would recommend reading that. I've recommended it. I've done a video recommending it, at least one. And like I've run Kill the Dead as a kind of adventure. The trick is whether you want to let a PC be Parldro or not is the trick. I don't want to give away that book, but Kill the Dead is great. And then in the Penguin Book of Vampire Stories, there's a story by Tanith Lee called Bite Me Not, or Fleur du Foie. And it's a really, really beautiful poetic take on vampires, especially how sort of alien they are, and the way they think and their consciousness and the way they live and communicate. They sing. They don't talk. They only sing to each other, and they live like birds up in mountain peaks. And there's a lot of beautiful poetry. There's a lot of romance. Well, I won't want to call it romance, but it's romantic. Like this scullery maid gets taken away by a king vampire, and it's interesting. But I want to recommend that Tanith Lee while we're on it. I think, this is embarrassing because I'm reading so many short stories and stuff. It's like one that specifically is a good one shot. Well, how short is the one shot? That's another question. Because there's a story in this Ellen Datlow anthology that I love so much, Screams from the Dark. This is a good anthology. Get this anthology. Just kidding. Okay. There's a couple stories in here that would be fun one shots. One of them is called Sealay, which is kind of a sea monster cult horror story. The Virgin Jimmy Peck. I don't know. No, not that. Bloodsugar by John Langan in this might be good. There's, I don't know. So Deep Ones? The Hunger with Bowie. Oh yeah, The Hunger. That's a fun modern vampire movie too. That's just very different. No, you don't. It's not clear. It's not clear. There's a couple of scientists, and they're in a rural village just off the coast of Scotland, and they find some human remains. And we'll just say they probably shouldn't have found those. And that's I think I like, because there's so many horror stories I love, and like the question is, can you actually adapt this? There's a cool story by Laird Barron called In a Cavern in a Canyon, which with a little work, you could turn into a fun one-shot. It would mainly just be with one monster that appears and you fight him several times. There's oh, you know what? Clark Ashton Smith. I think you could take, yeah, okay. New answer now. The Charnel God by Clark Ashton Smith. That's a good right out of the right. I don't want to say out of the box, but like right from the text. The Charnel God by Clark Ashton Smith. That's the story of a guy whose epileptic girlfriend was abducted by ghoul-worshipping priests of Mordigian in the city of Zulbasair. And he has to go and attempt the impossible, get his girlfriend back from that priesthood. They never give a body back once they claim it. But it just so happens there's an auxiliary villain who also wants to steal any old attractive body that makes it into the morgue. He's a vile necromancer named Abnon Thaw. And it's this weird, it's a fun, you could run it as like a dungeon delve, and you've got like a couple of different antagonists in the background. You've got a few NPCs that you could incorporate and turn into minions. Monsters, I could easily see like some easy monster ideas. Yeah, okay. Sorry it took me a few minutes, but I think, yeah, The Charnel God by Clark Ashton Smith is definitely the story I would select as like, what's a good one-shot adventure that's right there in the text, where you just read it and you're like, the PCs will just be these main characters or this main character, right? Just put the PCs in the place of Feriam. Feriam is, if I'm not mistaken, Feriam is the name of the hero in the Charnel God, and that's fun. I also just like that story. It's cool. It's cool. It's got a necromancer in it, and he's exactly the sort of character to communicate why necromancers are gross and evil. But it's not about the necromancer, right? I mean, he's in there, but it's not his story. As opposed to necromancy in Nayat or Empire of the Necromancers. Those are both Clark Ashton Smith's stories that is just basically about necromancers. They're just about those guys. It's never about the necromancer. Is it about the necromancer? No, it's not about the necromancer. I think it is about how it's not about the bunny, though, in that section of Twin Peaks: The Return. Somebody's going to watch this video and have no idea whether I've lost my mind or something. But okay, it looks like what I've been live for a couple hours now. Should I wind it down, gang? What do you think? Should I talk a bit more? Any questions for me? Could wind things down, I suppose. I don't see why not. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you also if you don't watch this live, but you take a look later. I'm going to do another one of these. I'll try to do them more frequently. So far, I think I've done like one a year, maybe skip the first year. My channel is just approaching its 4th birthday, I think. And so I'll, probably do another one of these hangouts towards October. So look out then. In the meantime, I'm working on videos for Forlorn, Nova Vasa, The Sea of Sorrows, and Saina. I've also kind of got one for Kalakari. I feel like I can just do a video on Kalakari because I already wrote a 230-page adventure module about that place. So thanks for tuning in, and you'll see more from me soon.